Hey guys, so I'm back with a super simple tutorial Christmas stocking even though it's nowhere near December. Let's get to it. When printing out your pattern, make sure that your scale is set to 100% and that you do not have double-sided or two-sided checked off, and go ahead and click print. This is the pattern. Cut along the solid lines and then you're going to tape everything together. So for this stocking, I'm going to be using some normal cotton for the outer fabric and the lining fabric, the loop, and the cuff. For the cuff, you can omit it completely, or you can do like a fur cuff. You can even switch up the lining to maybe something like satin. You can switch up the outer fabric. I just like using cotton. To add some stability, I like to use one-sided fusible fleece, but you can also use batting. When cutting your fusible fleece, you want to make sure that the fusible sides are facing together. That way you'll end up with the front and back piece, rather than two fronts or two backs. Pin the two layers together to keep them from shifting, and then trim it by 1/2 inch all the way around. Cut out your outer and lining fabrics, again making sure that you have a front and back piece and not two fronts and two backs. You will not be trimming these pieces. Also cut out one cuff and one loop piece. Once you've cut everything, go ahead and iron out any wrinkles. Fuse the fusible fleece to both of your outer pieces by putting the rough side, which is the adhesive side, of the fusible fleece against the wrong side of your outer fabric. Center it, flip it over, and iron on the decorative fabric side. They should now look like this. Fold your loop in half long ways and stitch with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Snip off some of that seam allowance, being careful not to cut into your stitches. Use a safety pin to turn the loop right side out. Press the seam in the middle, fold it over, and press in place. Measure about 3 inches down from the top of your front outer piece and lay your cuff right sides down across. Pin in place and sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Fold the cuff upwards, press in place, and cut off the excess. Grab your back outer piece and place your loop about 1 inch in on the heel side with the raw edge facing upwards and the folded edge facing downwards towards the heel. Place a lining piece on top with the right side down so that the outer and the lining are right sides together, and make sure that they are both facing the same direction. Clip it in place and sew along the top with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch in the beginning and end, and also when you go over the loop. Clip off that excess loop, open up your 2 layers, press the seam down, and then top stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Repeat with the front outer piece by laying the lining on top, right sides together, pin in place, and sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Open it up, press the seam, and top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Now we're going to sew the whole thing together. So lay your front and back pieces with your lining right sides together and do your best to line up all the edges. Make sure to line up the 2 seams at the sides. Clip and pin everything in place and sew around the entire stocking with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, making sure you leave about a 2 inch gap at the bottom of the lining. Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and end of your stitching. Trim off all the excess seam allowance. Make small slits in the curves, making sure not to clip your stitches. And pull the whole thing right side out through that gap you left at the bottom of the lining. Use something blunt to poke out all those seams and curves, and then press them with the iron. Fold in the edges of the gap, press it in place, and edge stitch it closed. Push the lining inside the stocking and then give it a final press. And just like that, you have a stocking. This is probably one of the easiest sewing projects. You can definitely customize the cuff, you can put a name on it, like if you have a cutting machine like a Cricut or a Silhouette, or you can even just buy the iron-on letters from the store and make it your own. And the possibilities are limitless with all the different fabrics you can use. My stocking turned out being about 8¼ inches wide for the neck, 13 inches from the top of the stocking to the bottom of the heel, 15½ inches from the top of the stocking to the lowest point of the foot, and 11½ inches from the tip of the heel to the tip of the foot. It's a pretty nice size stocking. I will leave a link to my Etsy shop in the description so you can purchase this pattern if you'd like. I really appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and take care. Bye-bye.